First of all, an invitation. If this topic touches you in any way, leave a like and subscribe to the Psychedelic Tear channel right now. Here, each video is a crossing, a rupture with what you think is reality. And today, a portal will be opened, the hidden truth of archetypes according to Jung. Do you really know who's behind your choices? Or are you living trapped by invisible forces, ancestral patterns that silently guide your thoughts, desires, and fears? The theme of this video is an intense and transformative journey. For those seeking to awaken, there's no way to ignore the impact of archetypes on identity formation. Carl Gustav Jung dedicated his life to revealing what many refuse to see. Archetypes are deep psychic structures, universal images that shape our behavior, often without us realizing it. They are invisible masks we've worn since birth. Have you ever stopped to think, who are you without these masks? This video is an invitation to tear the veils, cross through the mirror, and see beyond the ego. Write in the comments right now this symbolic phrase, I tear the veils and cross through the mirror. This way, you seal your commitment to this crossing. Many believe they make free choices, but do they really? Or are they trapped in patterns that cross generations? Depth psychology shows us that the collective unconscious is an invisible web that connects all of us. This isn't empty mysticism, but a science of the soul. In this video, we'll explore how these forces act and, more importantly, how it's possible to break free from them to access the deep self, the essence that exists beyond social programming. Stay until the end to understand how to open this portal in your own life. Throughout this narrative, you'll be provoked to look within, question your beliefs, and observe how the psychic matrix influences even the smallest details of your existence. The question guiding this crossing is simple yet unsettling. Do you want to continue being manipulated by hidden forces, or do you want to finally take command of your own psyche? Leave in the comments now, I take command of my psyche. This is your symbolic seal to follow on this journey. Take a deep breath. The portal is opening. Now we walk together to unveil the invisible masks we wear daily. Upon crossing the portal, what reveals itself are ancient forms, images that have always been present, even if hidden. These are the archetypes, according to Jung, universal patterns that inhabit the collective unconscious and shape the human psyche. The hero who seeks victory, the sage who advises, the rebel who challenges, the mother who embraces. All of us, without realizing, wear these invisible masks. They are structures as ancient as humanity itself, loaded with symbolic meanings. Now, write in the comments the phrase, I recognize the masks I wear. This is your conscious commitment to self-knowledge, to the crossing we're making at this moment. What's most unsettling is realizing that often we don't even choose these masks. They are automatically activated according to culture, family, and life experiences. Jung warns us, whoever ignores archetypes lives like an automaton, repeating patterns they don't understand. Imagine, how many decisions in your life were actually archetypal impulses you never questioned? The theater metaphor helps. We all act in plays written long before we were born, wearing roles programmed by invisible forces. And you? Do you know what role you've been playing? Leave in the comments, I discover my role in the great play. This strengthens your presence in this journey. Perceiving the existence of archetypes doesn't mean denying their power, but understanding it and, from that, conquering freedom. The first step is recognizing there are patterns that govern our behaviors and emotions. The hero, for example, drives you to seek challenges, to prove your worth. The shadow, which we'll discuss later, represents everything you avoid admitting about yourself. It's a silent game, but extremely powerful. Therefore, remaining unconscious of these patterns means living under the command of something you don't even see. Now, respond in the comments. What masks command me without my realizing? This is a vital step for your mental deprogramming. Deprogramming oneself is one of the greatest challenges anyone can face. After all, archetypes aren't simply ideas, but energetic forces that structure your identity. They're like hidden codes that program emotions, decisions, and behaviors. And only by bringing light to these forces is it possible to transform them. It's like tearing up an invisible script and beginning to write your own narrative. Therefore, understanding archetypes is the beginning of a great rupture, breaking with what was unconsciously imposed, and thus freeing yourself to live more authentically. Leave your mark in this process. Comment now, I rewrite my own narrative. We move forward then to understand how these patterns connect in an invisible psychic web. The revelation is inevitable. Archetypes don't exist in isolation, but are all intertwined in a gigantic psychic web that envelops every human being. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the psyche, shared by all humanity where archetypes live and manifest. You are never alone in your thoughts, emotions, or impulses. Everything is connected. Write in the comments the phrase, I recognize the web that connects me to everyone. This is a symbolic key, a way to seal your perception that we are not islands but living parts of a common and invisible psychic field. This web is like a vast energy field charged with symbols, ancestral memories, and patterns that influence everything from our dreams to our most rational choices. When you feel fear facing the unknown, when you seek approval, or when you desire to break limits, you're not acting only as an individual, but also as an expression of millenary collective forces. This isn't superstition, it's psychic science. Jung realized that myths and symbols repeat in all cultures, even among peoples who never had contact. Have you noticed how similar stories arise in different traditions? Leave in the comments, I awaken to universal stories. This is another conscious step. Therefore, understanding the collective unconscious is recognizing that there's a kind of invisible source code programming our civilization. This code wasn't created by governments or institutions, but is prior, as ancient as humanity itself. The matrix we speak of here isn't made only of digital algorithms, but of symbols and psychic patterns that shape human behavior en masse. Have you ever asked yourself who really programs your mind? Don't leave this question hanging. Write in the comments, I question who programs my mind. Each phrase written is a symbolic anchor that strengthens your deprogramming journey. This consciousness radically expands your worldview. Nothing you feel or think is isolated. Everything resonates in the web. Your emotions, your fears, your creativity, everything reverberates in this collective field. Spiritual awakening requires precisely perceiving this hidden connection. And more, learning to navigate consciously in this web without being unconsciously dragged by collective flows. Therefore, remaining ignorant of this dimension is staying vulnerable to the energetic manipulation that governs current society. We want to know, do you feel you've been manipulated by collective patterns? Respond in the comments. Your perception can help other people on this same crossing. Upon perceiving the existence of the psychic web, it becomes inevitable to recognize that it can be, and frequently is, manipulated. The modern matrix isn't limited to economic or technological systems, but acts mainly in the symbolic dimension, controlling archetypes to shape mass behaviors. Advertising, entertainment, political ideologies, all operate through archetypal manipulation. Think. How many patterns do you repeat because they were externally stimulated without you realizing? Write now in the comments, I recognize the manipulations I've suffered. This phrase is more than a reflection, it's a conscious rupture with the invisible control cycle. Archetypal manipulation happens when certain symbols are activated massively, creating predictable behaviors. Society stimulates the archetype of the consumer. The competitor, the alienated warrior, but silences the sage, the mystic, and the authentic creator. Thus, your psychic energy is channeled to maintain systems that don't benefit your awakening, but rather the perpetuation of the status quo. Have you noticed how certain behavior patterns are promoted as normal, while others are ridiculed or repressed? Right, I break with imposed patterns. By declaring this, you create a psychic space to express your deep self outside the matrix's control. Carl Jung warned that when archetypes are unconsciously manipulated, they generate neuroses and existential crises. After all, you end up living according to scripts you didn't choose, feeling empty and disconnected from your true essence. This is exactly what feeds the generalized malaise of contemporary society, a fragmented collective psyche, distanced from its center. We want to know, have you felt this sensation of emptiness, as if your life were conducted by forces you don't understand? Share in the comments. Your account may be the reflection of the awakening of many who, like you, seek to break with invisible manipulation. Perceiving this manipulation is the first step to neutralizing it. The second is initiating a conscious process of deprogramming, which involves identifying and reframing the archetypes that govern you. Only this way is it possible to transcend the role of puppet and assume the position of author of your own narrative. Write in the comments, "I am the author of my narrative." This is your symbolic seal to continue this journey of self-discovery. From here, we begin to glimpse the path of integration, how to transform these archetypal forces, which previously controlled you, into allies in your spiritual awakening process. When the individual recognizes archetypal manipulation, the opportunity for a rare movement arises, the transformation of archetypes into conscious forces. From passive puppet, they become active creator of their own psyche. Jung called this process individuation, the unification of unconscious fragments to form an integrated self. It's not about destroying archetypes, but dialoguing with them, understanding their functions and limits. Now, write in the comments, "I choose to be the creator of my life." This phrase is a symbolic key, a mark of your commitment to no longer accept living under automatic patterns, but rather building your own trajectory. Archetypal transformation begins with self-knowledge, identifying which patterns most influence your life, and then consciously deciding whether you want to maintain them, adjust them, or overcome them. There's no more room for self-deception. Either you take command or you'll continue being guided by forces you can't even name. This process requires courage, as many archetypes are comfortable, even if limiting. Have you noticed which patterns you maintain only out of fear of changing? Share in the comments. Your reflection can inspire others to perceive that transformation begins precisely where fear resides. And remember, transforming isn't destroying, it's reframing. By becoming a conscious creator, the individual begins to use archetypes as tools. The hero can be invoked when there's need for overcoming, the sage when discernment is needed, the rebel when the system needs to be questioned. From forces that previously controlled you, archetypes become strategic allies in the process of spiritual awakening and building a more authentic life. Right now, I transform my archetypes into allies. This phrase symbolizes your passage to a new level of consciousness, that of someone who recognizes the symbols that govern them and uses them with wisdom and intention. This transformation isn't an isolated event, but a continuous process, a daily practice of observation, reflection, and conscious action. Each choice becomes an exercise in freedom, each behavior a deliberate expression of your essence and no longer an unconscious repetition. This is the path of the conscious creator, one who, instead of being passively molded by the archetypal web, learns to weave their own network of meanings. Leave your symbolic mark, comment now, "I weave my own network." We now move forward to understand what is the deepest stage of this process, the encounter with the shadow, the rejected part of oneself. As one advances in the individuation process, the journey inevitably leads to the encounter with the shadow. According to Jung, the shadow is the rejected part of ourselves. Impulses, desires, fears, and traits we learn to hide out of fear or shame. However, this force doesn't disappear. It hides in the depths of the unconscious, awaiting the moment to manifest. Facing the shadow isn't an option, but a necessity for those who want to free themselves from psychic bonds. Write in the comments, "I accept meeting my shadow." This phrase is a symbolic act of courage, the first step toward integrating the rejected parts of oneself. The common error is trying to destroy the shadow, but Jung warned, it shouldn't be eliminated but recognized and assimilated. The shadow contains creative potency, vitality, and aspects of our personality that, once integrated, strengthen the self. Denying it is perpetuating internal division. Embracing it is conquering wholeness. Have you noticed behaviors in yourself that you always tried to deny or hide? Share in the comments. Your sincerity can inspire others to perceive that there's no complete light without recognizing the zones of internal darkness. Shadow integration is an essential step to transcend archetypal manipulation. The encounter with the shadow is often uncomfortable, but it's in this confrontation that true power emerges. The masks fall, fears are exposed, and the possibility of healing reveals itself. Jung said that what you resist persists, and the shadow is the greatest example of this. The more it's repressed, the more strength it gains, sabotaging relationships, decisions, and happiness itself. Right now, I stop resisting my shadow. This declaration symbolizes your willingness to transform what once generated fear into a source of personal power and authenticity. The path continues to an even deeper level, the dissolution of the ego. By integrating the shadow, the individual strengthens their psychic structure and prepares for one of the most challenging movements, the dissolution of the ego. But first, it's necessary to honor the shadow as the guardian that protected essential parts of oneself, even if dysfunctionally. This recognition transforms the antagonist into an ally, opening the way for transcendence. Leave your symbolic mark. Comment, "My shadow is my ally." This is a seal of spiritual maturity. From here, the journey deepens toward what many call illumination, overcoming the limits of the ego and expanding consciousness beyond the conventional I. By integrating the shadow, the ego, this construction that serves as a social mask begins to lose its rigidity. The dissolution of the ego doesn't mean losing identity, but freeing oneself from the bonds that limit the full expression of being. Jung pointed out that the ego is only a small part of the psyche, and that the true essence resides beyond it, in the deep and timeless self. This is the point where many feel fear, as they believe that without the ego there is no existence. Write in the comments, "I choose to transcend my ego." This phrase is the invitation to abandon the illusions that sustain the old self and open space for the birth of a broader consciousness. The dissolution of the ego is a gradual process. It occurs as the individual perceives they are not their thoughts, nor their feelings, nor the masks they learn to use. It's in this emptying that the deep self emerges, silent, serene, complete. There's no longer a need to prove, compete, or conquer. There's only authentic presence. Have you experienced moments when you felt free from external pressures, simply being who you are? Share in the comments. This type of account inspires others to perceive that, despite the culture of performance, it's possible to live more aligned with one's own essence. At this stage of the journey, many illusions fall, the incessant search for validation, the fear of rejection, the need to conform to imposed standards. The deep self doesn't seek approval, as it recognizes that its existence is complete in itself. The dissolution of the ego, in this sense, isn't an end, but a new beginning, a crossing to a more authentic way of being in the world. Right now, I am more than my ego. This phrase is a milestone of overcoming, a declaration that you don't limit yourself to the character you were trained to represent, but that something greater and truer exists within you. Upon awakening to the deep self, the individual begins to experience reality differently. Life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a space for creative expression and conscious presence. This state is described by many spiritual traditions as illumination, but here we understand it as a return to essence. Leave your symbolic mark. Comment, "I awaken to my deep self." This phrase seals the commitment to a more conscious life, less reactive and more connected to what is truest within you. And when this state is reached, a natural movement arises, sharing this experience with the world. After the profound experience of the deep self, the return to the common world isn't a simple act of regression, but a journey of integration. The individual now carries a new vision, where the simulated reality of the matrix is seen clearly without the blindness of illusions. This return is a challenge because it requires acting in daily life without getting lost in the traps of the system that manipulates collective consciousness. Write in the comments, "I return to the world with awakened eyes." This phrase symbolizes the awareness that it's possible to live in society without passively submitting to the forces that seek to control. The expanded self perceives that archetypal manipulation doesn't simply disappear because one has awakened. It still exists, but now it's possible to act with discernment and strategy. It's the moment to exercise the freedom of choice, resisting automatic programming and questioning the narratives imposed by the dominant culture. Do you feel you live in an invisible matrix? Share in the comments. This questioning is essential to create a community of conscious seekers, ready to strengthen the inner light and resist the darkness of systemic control. In this return, social criticism and the keen eye for toxic masculinity gain new meaning. The expanded self understands that true strength isn't in domination, but in the integration of the deepest aspects of being. Criticism of the system isn't just a cry of revolt, but an invitation for inner reconstruction, for creating more authentic and compassionate human relationships. Right now, I choose authentic strength. Your response is a step to dissolve old patterns and build new archetypes based on respect and consciousness. Finally, the journey of the expanded self is also a call to share the awakening. This action, far from being simple dissemination, is an act of spiritual and political resistance. By sharing your discoveries, the individual helps illuminate paths so others can break the chains of the matrix. Leave your symbolic mark, comment, "I share my light to awaken others." This is the final seal of this stage, a commitment to expanding collective consciousness and strengthening inner freedom. The cycle completes, but the journey continues. If you enjoyed this journey through the hidden world of archetypes and their transformative power, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to Psychedelic Tear. Also share your favorite symbolic phrase from this video in the comments. Your voice is a fundamental part of this awakening network. The hidden truth of archetypes, according to Jung, isn't just theory. It's the portal to the deep self, to the true freedom that is born when we become conscious authors of our own story.